A warning before we begin. This is a chilling story, inspired by terrifying true events. What you are about to hear may be deeply unsettling. Listen at your own risk.
The judge clears his throat and begins to speak. The defendant has now given his version of events. The prosecution will now have the floor. The prosecutor adjusts his notes, then looks up with a steady, deliberate voice. There are parts of the defendant's testimony that do not align with reality. These events unfolded over 3 separate days, yet the evidence shows that the defendant was the perpetrator all along. You will hear from those who were present: the commanding officer at the scene in Frank's home, the police commissioner at the detention center, Matilda's friend Charlotte, and the incident commander who responded to Matilda's residence. He pauses, his gaze sweeping across the courtroom. I would like to begin with the first witness, the officer in command of the patrol dispatched to Frank's house that Friday. A uniformed figure rises and makes his way to the witness stand. His boots echo across the floor as he sits down, back rigid, voice clipped. On Friday evening, we were dispatched to the residence of Frank, who had reported that his nephew was acting violently. We observed the defendant at the front door, repeatedly striking it with an axe. We ordered him to drop the weapon, but he ignored our commands. We were forced to use a taser. The defendant was subdued, disarmed, and transported to the holding facility. The defendant's eyes widen. He feels the floor tilt beneath him, his chest tightening. His thoughts spiral. An axe? No, I never touched an axe. What the hell are they talking about? It was Frank. He was the one, not me. Not me. Why are they twisting this? Why won't they say what really happened? The next police officer takes the stand, the one who oversaw the defendant in the holding cell. His voice is colder, sharper than the first witness. During subsequent questioning, the defendant displayed abnormal behavior. He maintained a fixed stare, avoided eye contact, and provided no verbal responses, no emotions. His gaze was empty. The nurse was called and psychiatry was consulted, but the assessment was that he did not meet the criteria for admission. We expressed our concern and requested that he at least remain in custody for another night. However, we were informed by the prosecutor that he had to be released. When we told the defendant he was to be released, he reacted for the first time. He looked at us. His gaze was dark, threatening. He smiled and said,
"Thanks for the tip. I'll find somewhere else to sleep."
I've worked as a police officer for many years. That look, it was one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. The defendant stiffens in his seat, shock rippling through him once more. His thoughts frantic, pounding against his skull. Wait, no, that's not how it happened. I wasn't in a cell overnight. It was still Friday. I remember thanking them for suggesting I stay away from Frank. Yes, that's it. I was the one who didn't want to press charges against him. Why are they twisting everything? Why are they rewriting everything? The prosecutor calls the next witness, Matilda's friend Charlotte. She steps forward. Her voice is neutral but trembling. I received a text from Matilda on Saturday night. She wrote that she needed help. I didn't see it until Sunday morning. I attempted to call her several times without response. Concerned, I went to her residence together with a friend and contacted the police upon arrival. We knocked several times on the door. When the officers arrived, the door opened from inside. It was the defendant. He said Matilda was asleep. The defendant's chest tightens, his thoughts bursting like static. She texted for help. No, I was there. We laughed. We ate pasta. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't. That message, why is she lying? The prosecutor calls the next witness, the responding officer who entered Matilda's home. The officer steps forward, posture stiff. Upon our arrival, the defendant exited the apartment. He was fully dressed in clean clothes, and his hair appeared wet, as if recently washed. He insisted that Matilda was sleeping and asked us not to disturb her. When we entered the apartment, we found blood spattered across the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. Furniture was overturned. The room looked like the aftermath of a violent struggle. On the floor lay a broken iron. In the hallway, we located the victim, Matilda, with a ski pole driven into each eye. It was a very bizarre scene. We also found the defendant's bloody clothes in the bathroom. He was arrested immediately. The defendant grips the edge of the chair, his mind collapsing into panic. So, during my blackout, I showered, changed clothes? No, I don't understand. The officer continues. His voice sharpens, darker now. While escorting the defendant out of the residence, he became violently aggressive. He screamed, threatened us, and tried to smash his head against one of the officers. He spat repeatedly and attempts to bite. A spit hood was applied for officer safety. In my 10 years of service, I have not encountered such behavior. His eyes were pitch black, his stare filled with pure malice. It looked as though he wanted to kill me right there and then. He was immediately transferred to psychiatric emergency care. The prosecutor thanks the witnesses. The defense attorney rises, adjusts his papers with deliberate care, and addresses the court in a calm, steady tone. The court has heard the evidence and testimony. I want to remind the court that my client himself has given a detailed account which clearly shows he was in a psychotic episode. He has not tried to hide anything. On the contrary, he has described distorted details that align with such a condition. For example, when he believed he was pulling on a door to keep Matilda out, how he in his mind protected himself against Matilda because she was a zombie, but in reality, he was pulling to open the bathroom door where Matilda was trying to protect herself from him. The same thing with Frank. In his perception, he was in mortal danger and acted in self-defense. I want to emphasize that the defendant cared deeply for both Frank and Matilda. He never wanted and would never intentionally seek to harm them. The forensic psychiatric examination concluded that the act was committed under a severe mental disorder. I therefore request that the defendant be committed to psychiatric care. The defendant's heart skips a beat. He feels that the entire room freezes. Everything stops. Thoughts flood in all at once, exploding inside his head. This can't be true. This is a conspiracy. That bathroom door. No, it must. It has to. This can't be true. The prosecutor steps forward, voice hard, eyes scanning the courtroom. The defense speaks of psychosis and mental disorder, psychiatric care. But let us be clear, this tragedy could have been prevented. If the defendant had followed the doctor's recommendations, taken prescribed medication, or chosen any safer alternative, he would not have fallen into a psychotic state. The use of cannabis and hallucinogenic mushrooms knowingly exposed him to hallucinations and severe psychiatric episodes. The defendant was fully aware of the risks. He chose this path, disregarding medical advice. This tragedy, the death of Matilda, the attempted killing of Frank, the chaos, the violence, did not have to happen. And because of that choice, he must be held accountable and sentenced to life in prison. The defendant's eyelids grew unbearably heavy. He struggled to keep them open, vision smearing at the edges. Shapes dissolved, the walls bending into the floor, into the air. Sounds dulled, as if the courtroom had been drowned in water. Then, silence. From deep within him came a monstrous, unearthly sound, a raw echo of the psychosis consuming him.
Sweet dreams.